In 1962, Charlie Sitton Jr. was born into one of McMinnville's original pioneer families and owners of the Century Farm. He seemed destined to become an everyday blue-collar American farm boy, but between his daily chores, Charlie would discover that he had a true passion for the game of basketball. As a boy, Charlie would gather with his cousins and friends to play for hours on a small court housed in the Sitton barn. This is where Charlie learned the game, and from a very young age, people could tell that Charlie Sitton was going to be a very special player.
You could see right away, this kid had, great hand-eye coordination and quickness for a kid of his size.
Charlie's size and skill helped his junior high school teams go unbeaten in all 3 years. In high school, his successes would grow with his competitiveness.
I can remember his first practice. He was a fierce competitor. Is probably the most competitive kid I've ever coached. In the first practice, I had 2 veteran guards, Pat Garlock and John Grimm, and they were tough kids. And they were not going to be out-hustled by a sophomore. Well, and Charlie was not going to be out-hustled by a senior. I think Charlie pulled a groin that day just trying to make sure those 2 guys didn't out-hustle him.
What set him apart from other great players was how hard he worked at the game. I don't think there's ever been a player his size in the history of basketball that played as hard as Charlie Sitton played. You saw some 6-foot guards that maybe played that hard, but he was a 6'10" guy that played harder than anybody in the entire state, and I don't think he ever did anything half speed.
The thing about Charlie is he only knew one way to play. There was no nice guy about Charlie when he went on the floor. So I brought him into PE class and I let him play a little bit, and then he was horrible. He would swat everybody's shot, growl at them. That's Charlie. He only knew one way to play. So at that point, he no longer was allowed to play in the PE classes because your basic farm kid was looking at the ball and Charlie was just swatting everything he put up.
In his sophomore season, Charlie made first-team All-State and led the Grizzlies past one of Oregon's best teams, Churchill, in the state playoffs in a thrilling 4-overtime game, which is still considered by many to be the best game in tournament history. Now the entire state knew that Charlie Sitton was no ordinary farm boy.
The crowds and what we had during those times, it was unbelievable. People were standing in line, before the JV game started.
You had to watch the JV game if you were going to watch the varsity game.
And maybe sometimes you couldn't even get into them. They were always sold out, no matter where they went.
We had to turn people away from McMinnville High School's gym. And I, unfortunately, was one of the individuals that had to say, you can't come in, because the fire marshal says, that's it.
In his junior year, Charlie continued to improve on the court, leading an already talented Grizzly squad, coached by Nick Robertson and Ross Peterson, to a perfect season, culminating in a state championship. Once again, the Grizzlies would have to get past Churchill in the tournament, and this time it was in the state finals. Churchill slowed the pace of the game by holding the ball in offense and only attacking when the opportunity presented itself. It was another closely contested game, but in the end, Charlie switched 2 free throws with only 5 seconds left in double overtime to lift the Grizzlies to their first and only state championship in boys basketball.
You know, it was just a very intense game, and all of our games that year and the year after, whenever we had Charlie, were really slow paced because people knew if they ran with us, I mean, they'd just get blown off the court. So that was a real stall tactic. And so every possession was just critical. And I just remember that in that game, the same thing. Every possession was just critical. And then we went to, you know, the overtimes, and it was just really intense. Is really what I remember. And then when you hit those free throws, it was like, holy mackerel, we finally made it. Because it was a long road, undefeated season, and a lot of pressure going through the whole season undefeated. And we had a real close call at Lake Ridge.
He ends up making the 2 free throws at the end to win the state title. But, you know, people told me it was the greatest game they'd ever seen. It was extremely nerve-wracking for fans, I think. What I heard was people just about died because, you know, 2 overtimes where every point was big. I just don't think there was anything more nerve-wracking than that ball game.
I was involved on some of the committees with the OSAA, and I can still remember one of the gentlemen at the OSAA coming to me. He says, you know something? McMinnville saved this state basketball tournament. I said, what do you mean? He said, you must have had anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 people here every game they played. And he said that was a real factor in the success of this basketball tournament. And so, you know, that's how fired up everybody was.
We were not that big a town at that time, and everything was the high school basketball, Charlie Sitton. And because he was getting so much national recognition, it was wild in town, actually.
He put us on the map. Just like Linfield has for their football games, Charlie put it on McMinnville on the map. And he is a legend.
You know, the band was involved, the rally was involved, and the streets were lined with, you know, there was hundreds of people downtown. And they stopped it down there by the bank corner and had the kids, Coach Robertson talked, and then had the kids talk. And again, it was just an atmosphere of what a thrill.
By this time, Charlie was starting to get national recognition as one of the best high school players in the country.
Sometimes he was so impressive that referees didn't know what happened.
The ref threw the ball up, and he caught the ball, and he flicked it in, and he made the basket. And we're like going, you know, how amazing is that? You know, and the crowd went wild, of course, because all the crowd was always huge at that time.
And the referees counted the basket. And the rule was it wasn't supposed to count. But I think it was so, the referees were so surprised that they actually kind of forgot the rule too. The play that would always stand out in my mind when we won the state championship, we were playing Lake Ridge in a game that eventually went 3 overtimes, and I believe the second overtime we were behind by 2 points with about 40 seconds to go, and they stalled for about 30 seconds, and at about the 10 or 12 second mark they made a cross-court pass, and the guy got the ball who was 6'7" and ended up being a Division I player at Montana State. Caught the ball in the bottom block. Charlie was in the far corner. The guy went up to dunk from one side. Charlie came across the floor, went across the rim,
and blocks that guy's shot. And to this day, I can see that coach's clipboard flying through the air, because if they make it, the game's over, and we don't go. We're not in the final game.
Just an amazing play, and he came out of nowhere and really saved the day for us.
And Charlie went the other way and scored on the break. So we go up, and we end up winning the ball game.
I know there are a lot of people that would still say that was maybe the very best play ever made in the state basketball tournament. It was an incredible play.
Charlie would lead McMinnville to another great season during his senior year, compiling a record of 22-3 and bringing the Grizzlies back to the state finals. Though they would come up short in the championship game, Charlie and the Grizzlies concluded the best 3 years Mac High basketball has ever seen. During his high school career, Charlie shot an astounding 74% from the field and 78% from the free throw line, while averaging 27 points and 14 rebounds per game. He led the Grizzlies to an unbelievable 72-6 record, while achieving All-State First-Team honors all 3 years, an Oregon High School Athlete of the Year award, a First-Team All-American selection, a National High School Basketball Player of the Year award, and a state championship. He had a career best of 46 points while making 18 of 20 shots from the floor and grabbing 21 rebounds in a victory over Tiger during his senior year. But stats were not what Charlie Sitton sought.
If Charlie had wanted to, I firmly believe he could have averaged 45 points a game for his entire high school career. But he was a completely unselfish player, almost to a fault. He just simply didn't miss shots, but he was a perfect teammate to play for. I don't think any kid that played high school basketball with Charlie Sitton would ever tell you anything other than that he was the best teammate they ever played with, because he was very willing to give up the ball when, to be honest with you, probably he shouldn't. We were going to score if Charlie Sitton had the ball.
Even when he was on the bench, he was yelling and clapping, and he wanted success for the team first.
Whether it was in practice or in the games, you know, he was the big star, but he worked harder than anybody on the team. It was just unreal. I mean, we'd all come out of practice with bruises all over ourselves because of how hard he played. And we had these, coach required us to wear these little knee pads. Everybody had to wear knee pads. And he had these, you know, long legs and these little knee pads on there, and he'd dive on the floor like everybody else, you know, in the practices. And that made us all better because he just had so much passion for the game, and every practice was a war, and that just made us all better. And so that's really what I'll take away from him as a teammate, was how much he loved the game and how hard he played. And it just, like I said, we had a great coach, had great players, but Charlie was really what made it all go and made us a great team.
On March 29th, 1980, Charlie played in his fourth and final National All-Star game held in Washington, D.C. He was voted most valuable player in that game and was quickly becoming a household name and one of the most heavily recruited athletes in the country. The small-town farm boy could have gone anywhere, but his roots were in McMinnville and his heart at his family's 1,600-acre farm. This made the already talented Oregon State University an easy choice for Charlie to pursue a higher level of education in basketball.
Well, to put a little emphasis on it, I would like to say that I coached at Oregon State for 34 years. Most of that time as an assistant coach and a recruiter, and I would say it was the biggest get, so to speak, that in my 34 years, signing of Charlie Sitton. He was nationally recruited. He was highly regarded by all the universities in the entire country. And so when we landed Charlie as a student and an athlete in basketball here at Oregon State, it was a big, big plum.
Charlie had a strong freshman season playing for the Beavers' legendary coach Ralph Miller and his assistant Jimmy Anderson. Oregon State was ranked 7th in the nation during the preseason, and in a little over a month they gradually climbed into the #1 spot, as Charlie was quickly moved into the starting lineup. From December 30th through the remainder of the season, the Beavers held the #2 ranking for 6 weeks and were the #1 ranked team in the nation for 5 weeks. The 1980-81 team is the only #1 ranked team that the Beavers have ever had, and that team is currently in the OSU Hall of Fame. They achieved a 26-2 record with all 26 wins coming in a row, which is still the second longest winning streak in OSU history. With Charlie and the team playing so well, he earned a spot on the All-Pac-10 freshman team, and the Beavers earned the #1 seed in the NCAA tournament, but were unfortunately upset in a 2-point loss to 8-seeded Kansas State. With a great freshman year of experience under his belt, Charlie went into the summer determined to improve his game. As his sophomore season began, everyone could see that his hard work had paid off. Charlie led the Beavers in block shots and more than doubled his scoring average from his freshman season, on his way to an All-Pac-10 selection and an All-Far West Classic MVP. With the improved play of Charlie and the acquisition of future NBA Ironman AC Green, the Beavers achieved a 25-5 record and the #4 ranking in the final 3 weeks of the regular season. Determined to leave the previous year's disappointment behind them, OSU entered the 1982 NCAA tournament as the #2 seed and breezed past the first 2 opponents by 19 and 18 points respectively, earning them a spot in the Elite 8. Unfortunately, that was as close as they would get to the NCAA championship, as they lost to future NBA great Patrick Ewing's #1 seeded Georgetown Hoyas. The 1981-82 season was a great one for Beaver fans, one that ended with a lot of promise. However, after losing All-American Lester Connor, the team's leader in scoring, rebounding, assists, and steals, to the NBA in the summer of '82, it was obvious that someone was going to have to step up as the team's new leader. Charlie would answer the call with characteristic intensity, making the '82-83 season his best yet. He led the Beavers in 4 categories, including scoring with 19 points per game, while notching a career high of 32 points on 2 separate occasions. He was selected to the All-Pac-10 team and was an All-American. He won the team MVP and was runner-up for the Pac-10 MVP while leading OSU to a 20-11 record and to the Elite 8 in the NIT tournament. Charlie's incredible season was capped off with a selection to the 1983 USA basketball team set to compete in the Pan Am Games in Venezuela. Charlie started a few of the games for the USA team, but it was the up-and-coming Michael Jordan who was the star of the team. USA went undefeated on their way to the gold medal. OSU and Charlie's success continued into his senior year when he led the team in 3 categories, including blocks and scoring with 15 points per game, earning him another All-American selection. This time, Charlie would take the Beavers back to the NCAA tournament after a 22-7 record and their third Pac-10 championship in 4 years. But on March 15, 1984, Charlie ended his illustrious college career after a 2-point loss to West Virginia. It was a career that achieved 4 All-Pac-10 selections, 2 All-American selections, a team MVP, and a 79% winning percentage, going 93-25 while participating in the postseason all 4 years. To this day, Charlie ranks 4th all-time in field goal percentage at OSU with 57.5% and is the Beavers' 5th all-time leading scorer. Charlie Sitton's professional career began when the Dallas Mavericks selected him 38th overall in the 1984 NBA Draft. The Mavericks were a young team on the rise who were making the playoffs each season and getting close to legitimate contender status. This made it difficult for Charlie to log consistent playing time as he underwent the process of adapting to the NBA game. By the start of his sophomore campaign with the Mavs, Charlie's hard work was beginning to pay off in the form of increased minutes. But a broken right thumb suffered shortly after preseason forced him to be sidelined for the majority of that year. In the summer of 1986, after a tryout with the Portland Trail Blazers, Charlie decided that the time was right to pursue his professional basketball career overseas. Sitton achieved quick success as an all-star in the Italian League. After 3 seasons in Italy, Charlie returned to America to compete in tryouts with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Charlotte Hornets. However, Charlie would badly injure his hamstring during training camp with the Hornets, keeping him out of basketball for the rest of the year. After recovering from this, Charlie returned to Europe, playing 1 season in Belgium before capping off his professional career with a season in France. Retirement from basketball marked a new beginning for the small-town farm boy from Oregon. Though his storied career had taken him all over the world, Charlie had never lost touch with his roots, and in 1997, he and his former coach, Nick Robertson, were both inducted into the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame. Additional accolades followed, including his 2006 induction into the Oregon State University Hall of Fame, both as an individual and a member of the 80-81 team. For the past several years, Charlie has run a successful hotel business in Tualatin. He remains actively involved in McMinnville by organizing an annual youth basketball camp with former teammate Chris Winkler. Charlie Sitton embraces the opportunity to give back to the community where he experienced some of the greatest moments of his life, having forged a legacy that will surely last the test of time.